Welcome to New Release Review, part of the Movie Friends podcast. Today we're talking about Saw X from 2023, directed by Kevin Gruder. This is not a spoiler-free episode, and so if you have not seen Saw X, please do not listen, do not watch, unless you want an entire franchise spoiled for you, in which case you are free to proceed. Today I'm joined by Erica Harold Hyder, and we are both very excited to talk about this movie. Erica, how are you?
Hi, I am great. I am super excited to be here and to chat about Saw.
This episode has been a long time coming. You and I are friends on Twitter, and I think if some people, there's like films or film series that you like identify that person with, right? And you are definitely the most outspoken Saw fan of anyone that I follow. Even when it's not like Saw season, you are talking about Saw. So before we get into this movie, can you just kind of explain like what is your Saw journey?
Yes, it's kind of interesting, and I have my whole collection here to keep us going for the chat. Just channeling all the Saw vibes.
That's awesome.
My journey with Saw is really interesting because it started with Saw 5, which is a really weird spot to kind of jump into the series.
Yeah.
We're kind of at the tail end of the crazy Jeff journey there.
Yep.
But my high school boyfriend invited me to a Saw marathon. I'd never seen them. I was very excited. I said, yeah, great, let's do it. And then the whole group said, no, let's just get to the new one. We're so excited. Wow. So we watched number 5. We skipped them all, and the whole time with Strom and Hoffman, I'm like, who is that? Who is that? I'm confused. So as soon as we finished, I'm like, I need to rent them all. So I rented them all, started from the beginning, and was just immediately obsessed with the twist endings and just the premise of the movie. I distinctly remember running around my house screaming at my mom about how crazy the twist was and how mind blown I was. And it's kind of just become a love of mine ever since. And they're all great. Like, I don't have any Saw movies that I don't like.
Got it. I think you and I differ greatly there. I remember when Saw came out and like the trailers and the marketing for it. And I remember talking with, some of my siblings or some of my friends and just be like, this is the craziest idea I've ever heard. Like a serial killer who kills people by torturing them. Like, and even just saying that, it sounds like, well, yeah, that doesn't sound that original. But genuinely, at the time when this came out, this was, at least for like mainstream horror movies or mainstream movies that were coming out, this was kind of unheard of. So many, you've got like Freddy and Jason and all these other horror franchises. The murders are always hands-on, And so the whole idea of like forcing someone to do something to survive, and if they don't, they die. It was it was just mind-blowing. Like all the lights in my brain were going off. And I didn't end up seeing it in theaters because I was probably, I don't even know, 13 or 14. I was pretty young when they came out. And I ended up watching this movie with my mom, who is not a horror person, like at all. I don't know. It was such an odd thing. We were just like looking for something to watch on TV, and we both were kind of like, how about this? And we watched it together. She guessed the ending within the first like 10 minutes.
No way.
Yeah. She said to me, she was like, I think I know the ending. I was like, you sure? She's like, I'm pretty sure the guy laying on the floor, I think that's the killer. And then as the as the end came up, I was just, my mind was blown, and I was like, how did you know that? And then for a while, Saws were coming out like every Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I didn't love the movies, except for the first one, it was like, oh yeah, we're going to go see the new Saw movie. And it was just kind of like fun. But leading up to Saw X, I was like, there's some holes in my Saw history that I need to fill in. And so I did all the movies, and I got to tell you, I was not having a great time for some of them, especially like that middle part, like 5 and 6. It's like I felt like the quality just really dropped in terms of like how they were shot and like acted. Like they felt more like I know you're in Canada, so I don't know if the channels are the same. But it felt like an ABC Family like teen drama, like the way that it was shot and like the acting was so cheesy. And then it turns out that Jigsaw has like 100 disciples, and like I didn't know that the doctor comes back around much later. Even though I actually thought that that was kind of cool.
I really liked that too. You're like, hey, wait, there he is.
Right? Yeah. So what I will say is, getting into this movie, I was so pleasantly surprised by Saw X. I thought it looked really good. I thought the tone was really good. It just felt like they decided to take a new direction and kind of like up the quality of everything, and I don't know. I really appreciated it. What did you think about this one?
I liked it,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, it kind of fell middle of the pack.
Okay.
Like in terms of the series, I think it would be like fourth or fifth for me. So like there's a lot of things I liked about it, and I agree, like the quality was really good, the acting was really well done. But for me it was very story heavy
Yes.
on like
Yes.
Jigsaw, which a lot of people really like, and I can appreciate that, and it's great to see Tobin Bell so heavily involved in the movie. But I found it took away a little bit from the traps, which are one of my favorite parts.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I like the story and I like the quality, but when looking at the series, there's others that I would rank before it for
Sure.
sure.
Sure. I watched an interview with the director, because he also had directed Saw 3D, and
Mm-hmm.
he's been the editor like the whole time. He's been involved with the films like since the beginning. And someone asked him something about like the effects of Saw 3D, or like the traps. And in talking about the story, he said he was like, well, it's a Saw movie, so the story, it's pretty much the same as every other Saw movie. He's like, that's not really what you're going for with a Saw movie. And I just laughed out loud at that, because I was like, here's the director, not ashamedly just admitting like, look, it's kind of not what these movies are about. And I can kind of appreciate that. Like, I can appreciate that. But in this one, I was just like, imagine like a Friday the 13th movie where we're like walking around with Jason, for like an hour straight of just like following this dude. And I know a lot of times in horror movies, because you're not just into Saw, you're big into all horror, right?
Yes, although I do find that in terms of franchises, there's some that I really haven't seen, and I'm shocked that I haven't. Like there's a lot of classics that I somehow haven't gotten around to yet, but I am a fan of the genre as a whole.
I was kind of the same way. I just decided last year I did all the Halloween movies, and then I started the Friday.
Elm Street, Final Destination.
No, Elm Street. Yeah, I started all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and I got to like 3, and everyone was like, "Oh, 3 is the best." And I was like, "If this is the best, oh my god!" But a lot of times in horror, the idea is you don't show the monster, or you don't show the villain a lot, because it makes it less scary. But in this one, of course, John Kramer is still a villain. His sense of morality is insane, and it's not justifiable. But he's kind of the victim in this movie, and so it becomes like totally different. And after all these years of like having this character and having the Saw series, I really loved just hanging out with him for a bit. When he was on that park bench doodling his torture machines. And it's
Just
like,
in daylight.
yeah. And it's just, everyone's like having fun around him and he's got like a smile on his face. I was like, it was so funny to me, but also like kind of touching. And I know that might be like sick, but I was like, oh, like they're really, really going another way. Again, like not to justify him. I don't think the movie does that. But we've come a long way from like, in the first Saw, the razor wire maze, that dude is in there because he's depressed.
Some of them are so wild. Like there's a guy in 6 who they're like, yeah, this guy smokes. I'm like, oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. Yes. And then the trap is like not in the favor of the smoking person to survive. Like the traps become very,
Yeah.
very unfair and stuff. And so in this one, we've got real villains. Like maybe, I don't know. I can't say. I'm going to say this and then someone's going to pull out someone. I mean, we had the group of neo-Nazis in Saw 3D, with
Yes.
Chester Bennington. They were bad, of course. But like this might be the most despicable group of people that we've met so far, like purposefully doing really bad things. And so you do kind of get on his side, but I feel like except for the main woman, Peterson, I
Oof.
feel like everyone else, you can kind of see why they went along with it. They need money, or, Gabrielle's a drug addict, and so she is feeding her addiction. You're also on their sides, like to survive. I mean, at least I was.
Mhm.
I don't know. Maybe you were like, I hope they all die.
Well, I always hope someone dies, but yeah, like you do root for them, and same with John. Like I find he's a very empathetic villain. Like as much as you're like, oh, like he's killing these people, but then you're like, yeah, but like he has cancer. Like that's so sad. Or like, oh, he lost his baby. That's also so sad. Like
Right.
he's been
Right.
through so much.
Right. So, as we already mentioned, Tobin Bell as John Kramer, Jigsaw. I think this is, for me, I think the best acting that he's doing in this series. And then Shawnee Smith as Amanda. How did you feel about her kind of coming back for a full movie?
I was very excited for her to be back, and I think everyone was. So it was really cool to see her, but I don't know if they did like de aging. There was something funky going on.
Yeah. 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 The
And I think
haircut,
like,
too, was like.
and I know she had a bad haircut in that
Yes.
storyline,
Yes.
but it was really bad.
Yeah.
And I think as Saw fans, we don't really care if they look as young. Like they threw a backwards cap on John, and
Right.
it's one of the best things. I love it. It's so funny.
It's
So like,
amazing. I love that. When I got to that scene in my watch through, I was like, okay, this is really funny, but also like this scene is really cool. Like him like
yeah,
threatening the dude and like being like, hey, I know that you're lying. Like I was like, oh man, this scene rules.
yeah, and like I love that's something I love about him too. Like a side note, like he people know who he is. He's on magazine covers. He doesn't hide it. Like he's out in public. Like yeah, you're doing bad things.
Yeah.
So that's just so funny. But yeah, I don't think they needed to do any de aging. If she looked her age, no one would care. I don't think.
Yeah, and like they do, it's a really good idea to put this story where they put it, because this is when John is dying, dying in
Mm-hmm.
between the movies. And so Tobin Bell is, he's a lot older, even though if you see him now, you're not like, oh my gosh, look at this scary old man. Um, but, it just works for him. There's a lot of things that can just be explained by the cancer, and being someone who was into the Saw films and then kind of coming back for this one. This is the first one I've seen in theaters in a real long time, probably since 4, honestly.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, I kind of wanted to see Spiral when
Mm-hmm.
that came out, and I don't even remember. Did that go to theaters? Was that
I
like
don't
a
think so. That was
pandemic?
released Yeah.
Yeah.
It came, I think it was supposed to, and then it got pushed back, and then they just released it.
Yeah, because I was like, "Oh, a new Spiral spinoff." I mean, a new, Saw spinoff and Chris Rock. Okay, this is interesting, and then yeah, it didn't happen. But it was very nostalgic for me sitting in the theater and seeing the Twisted Pictures logo come across this.
Yes.
I got this big smile on my face. I was like, "Oh, right, yes, of course, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah."
always thought that Twisted Pictures had so many movies like that they had produced or made, and I'm like, oh yeah, they do so many great things. I've seen that so many times, and they don't really. It's really just Saw. I'm like, oh no, I've just seen Saw too much.
Right. Hey, I mean, um, when you got it, you got it. I want to get into the story, but first, I want to ask you this question: Is the use of intestines as a rope the most disgusting thing that we've seen in this series so far?
It's up there.
I
When
was
they
shocked.
when they were doing that, like I was like, oh no, like I know where this is going. And my friend next to me had a reaction. I was like, it's gonna be a rope. Ah. And yeah, something about it, like it just feels so personal. Like they had to retrieve it. They thought of that on their own. And
Right. Yeah, that rope, like on thinking about the film and like the twists and everything that led to, the final trap, I was like, okay, so did they really expect them to get the intestines so that she could use the phone to call this guy so that they could get his
oh
like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, because that's the only way that she got her phone to call him, and calling him was how he came to the warehouse.
Huh.
So, it's just, and that's the part where there's nothing ever like magical about Saw. So many horror movies really, as time goes on, in order to explain things, they have to like delve into like magic or like witchcraft or like,
Mm-hmm.
hell or any, and Saw always kind of maintains like, no, there's nothing magical. It's just a really great engineer.
Yeah. That's
So
what
yeah,
makes it scary.
it is. I mean, it is. I mean, yeah, like, certain horror villains, they're like all powerful. They can appear at any time, or no matter, if you get away, they'll still be right around the corner. And like Saw has a little bit of that with his helpers, like Amanda just kidnapping everybody and no problems. And but the twists of each movie ending showing you like, hey, this was planned out. It's one of the more fun things. And I think as I was watching it, I honestly thought, oh, maybe they're not gonna do a twist this time.
I did too.
Yeah, because like Billy doesn't come out until like much later, and when he came out
Mm-hmm.
finally, even though I had seen the trailer, I was like, oh, that's right, Billy. Yes, right. Okay, okay, yeah, and they are doing the pig masks, and they are doing. But I kind of was just like, no, I don't think there's going to be a twist this time. I think it will just kind of end. But so yeah, I mean, they got me, even though I knew a twist should be coming. They still kind of got me.
I felt the same. Like even though it obviously is a Saw movie and it had Saw elements, it felt like the order was different or there was
Mm-hmm.
delays in things,
Yeah.
which is fine. It was something different, but there's like at this point in the series, you expect certain boxes to be checked, and this one kind of did its own thing a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if he hadn't imagined that first trap, we wouldn't
Yeah,
have
that
had a
was
trap
weird.
until close to an hour in.
Yeah, that one was so weird. Like they've never done that where they're like, actually, just kidding.
Right. Yeah, and I kind of liked that. Like, it's a pretty simple trap, and it's his whole thing, like, oh, you use your hands for stealing, and or your eyes for peeping, and so we're gonna break all your fingers. Even though honestly, I was like, this dude is getting off so easy in comparison to every other person who's been in a trap. Like, break all your fingers. Okay, your fingers will heal, or have your eyeballs sucked out. Like, that's a no-brainer, man. Like,
Yeah, one is way worse.
yeah, at least cut your fingers off or something. But like, I mean, even that, I'd be like, all right, okay, I think I can. They can reattach. Hey, I know a dude who had his hand totally messed up in like a leaf
Ooh,
blower or something, and
ugh.
they reattached him, and you know. Um, real quick question before I forget: did you see John Kramer's email?
Like the little contact form. I
Yeah,
didn't see an email.
yeah. So when he's contacting the Miracle Cure team, he types out an email. He puts his email in
Oh,
as kramerjohn994@gmail.com. And so I sent
yes.
it an email because I was like, is this real? And if you haven't done it yet and you're listening, just send an email to kramerjohn994@gmail.com. And I won't tell you what happens, but it's a fun little thing.
That is so cool. I never would have even thought to do that.
Oh yeah, anytime someone's typing something in, even I didn't type in the website yet, the link that he's given,
Mm.
but yeah, anytime there's an email, I'm honestly I was kind of shocked that his email is just John Kramer 994. I was expecting something a little bit more, but then I remember like, well, he is like a boomer dude using the internet in the early days.
I
Probably
thought it
back.
was perfect.
Yeah, it probably would have been like AOL or Hotmail back in the day in reality, but yeah.
Oh no, is Hotmail old? I still have one.
Oh yeah, for sure. You have a
Oh
Hotmail?
no. Yeah.
Holy cow! Wow. I don't know. I don't know that you can get that address anymore.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel older and older every day.
Yeah. So the story is pretty basic. John Kramer, as we know, is dying of cancer. He's got an inoperable tumor, and he's in a cancer support group, which seems like a real strange use of his time considering he's already started, you know. And I mean, at this point, from seeing all of the movies, we know that he's already done The Farm. He's already
Mhm.
done The Bathroom. He's done the dude with the knives face
Oh,
thing.
yes, Cecil.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So he's already, he's full in Jigsaw mode, and like he's spending his free time at a cancer support group, which is like, okay, whatever. And he chances upon one of those guys as he's writing his will, which writing out your own will, you know, finishing up the paperwork at an outside cafe.
He's just not subtle about anything.
No. Well, it's just, and like, okay, if you're listening to this and you feel like I'm like tearing this movie apart, I'm not. I really liked this movie. It's just I find some of the things funny, and I think we're supposed to find some of it funny. Um, so anyway, he chances upon a dude from the group, and he looks 100 times better. He tells him about this secret place. He contacts the secret place. They get him in. He goes to Mexico. He thinks he undergoes surgery. He doesn't. And then he enacts his not retribution, as he is very clear to say, but a chance for all of them to better themselves. And yeah, how did you feel about like this taking place in between two older movies and then the whole storyline?
I thought it was interesting. I remember going into it, I had read that if you're not like a fan of the series, you can still watch this movie. So I do think it acts pretty independently,
Mm-hmm.
but if you are a fan, it fits in nicely as well. I did think it was really funny though, because he went on this whole journey. It felt very intense and probably like you're just not going to get over that quickly at the end. I'm like, he just went through something pretty traumatic, and I'm like, yeah. And then he went on to number two and did the whole house of these people. I'm like, he just didn't stop.
No.
So it's funny, like being a fan of the franchise, seeing this crazy ordeal and being like, yeah, but then he didn't go home and be like, wow, I'm so thankful to be around still. I'm gonna go fishing. Like, no, it just got worse. And
How did you feel about the little kid Carlos? Like that whole like fixing the wheel and then being on the pivot table of blood together.
Carlos was interesting. Like, I feel like even though John is this villain and he's responsible for so many people's deaths, at one point in his life, he did fall in love and try to start a family. So, I don't know, like maybe there is this nurturing aspect to him. Like we see it with Amanda, we
Yeah.
see it with Carlos. So, I thought it was nice to see, and like this is an emotional kind of personal journey for John in this movie, so that ties in. I didn't like when Carlos comes in, and I don't think they're gonna kill him, but you just don't know, and that was scary.
Dude, after everything that we just saw, I was like, I really don't know what's going to happen. And then when they start like drowning him in blood, I was like, I really don't know what's going to happen. But this is, I mean, I know Amanda and John aren't about to die. And so I
Yes.
was like, is this kind of the thing that like really pushes him to like continue doing his work? Yeah, it was pretty. I will say Carlos might be like the biggest trooper of all time. Like he's not really screaming, you know. John tells him, you know, don't pull, and he's just kind of like, okay. And then when it's all over, he's like,
Yeah.
well, they give him the money, and he's like, all right, cool, let's go, guys. It's yeah.
Yeah, he has no context for what's going on. Like, the only word he understands is like no pull.
And like also like here's this guy that I hung out with for 15 minutes. We're going through an insane like life-threatening thing together, but I want to help save this guy's life too. I'm gonna come on, mister, let me pull the thing, let me share the pig blood. I was like, Carlos, wow, you. And then I was like, is Carlos going to become a disciple of Saw? And that will be Saw 11? Is like Carlos all grown up and he's used his money to go to engineering school? I don't know. Could
Oh,
be.
wow. Carlos made off good, though. He had to ordeal a little bit of blood, and look at all that money he got.
I mean, it's true. He's a rich kid. When I heard, because you hear the soccer ball kicking against the outside of the building, I thought that was going to be the cane of the doctor.
Oh.
Because you just hear like, and I was like, oh my gosh, are we going to see Carrie Elways, you know, appear and like save them from this trap? So I got very excited. And then I just saw it was Carlos outside. I was like, oh, come on, man.
I thought it was going to be Hoffman. And I was like, oh yeah, he's going to come in and he's going to help, and we're going to like put these people in their place. And then it was Carlos, and I was like, no.
Yeah. That would have been the greatest twist though of all time. Like you get the Saw twist music, like and you see like all these flashbacks of John teaching Carlos how to build traps for like one day only, and then Carlos closes the door and he's like, game over. That would have been pretty great. Yeah, Hoffman, I am not a big Hoffman guy. Like,
I'm not either.
He deviates too much from John's like plans. Like killing Jigsaw's wife, like that was really like, I was like, all right, I don't like you anymore at all. But yeah,
that was rough.
Yeah, he's not my favorite, but when John calls his detective friend earlier in the movie, I was like, oh, are we gonna see Hoffman on the other side of the line, and then we didn't. And I was like, oh, that's kind of lame. And then, did you stay for the post-credit scene?
I was just gonna ask if you did.
Yes.
I left, got
Uh,
to the little aisle where the exit door is, and then I heard noise. I'm like, get back, and we ran back.
Holy moly! Yeah, I'm glad you saw it.
Me
And yeah, we get
too.
Hoffman.
Yeah, like it felt weird that he
Yeah,
was like, yeah, we included him, but barely. Like, why? Where was he? What's he doing?
honestly, like visually, that post-credit scene felt like a throwback to like the last few installments. Just the way that it was shot, some of the like crazy spinning effect, and like, I was like, oh man, because this, Saw X does feel uh, visually like a pretty big departure from all of the other ones, and so it was kind of cool to have that um, almost like style with Hoffman. I thought it
Mm-hmm.
was I thought it was kind of interesting. So, like we mentioned, Saw movies are not all about the story. Even though I thought this one was pretty good. So I want to ask you about the traps. So I wrote down the
Yes.
traps, and so we already kind of briefly mentioned the eyeball sucker. Um, I love when the guy, you find out that it's just like a daydream that John is having, which is like very creepy. It's like, John, my God, dude, chill out. It's a watch. Like, it's a watch. Um, but I love when the guy puts the watch back and John just says, good choice.
He has no idea what he just survived.
Right, exactly. So anyway, what did you think about the eyeball sucker finger thing?
That was one of the things I was most anxious about going into this movie. I was like, are eyeballs going to get sucked out? Is like acid going to be poured into them? Like, what's going to happen with these eyeballs? I don't know. It felt a little tame,
Mm-hmm.
but I also really liked being able to see the direct connections. Like, so the guy who was in the trap when he was in the hospital room stealing from the patient, like you could see the patient's hand was hooked up to a
Yep.
similar contraption,
Yep.
and then his trap. Like, it's cool when they see those connections. Like, oh, like John saw this, was inspired, and have now it's in his trap.
Yep.
So that's one of the things I really like about this series is the little details that all connect somewhere down the line. So I liked that aspect. The actual trap, I'm like, oh, that was neat, but it wasn't crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one that I could see myself and be like, yeah, like I could survive that at least.
This is one of the only saw traps that I would be able to survive,
Yeah.
because I would not have been going one at a time. Like as soon as I saw one broke my finger, I'd be like, all right,
Yeah.
leap, just do all of them at the same time. I'll go into shock, but
Yeah.
I would
Pull
not
the
want to
band aid.
experience. Yeah, no way am I doing one at a time. Like, oh gosh, if you do all of them, it's just general pain. But so then we have the bomb arms, and John kidnaps the taxi driver who is in on it. And this also reminded me kind of like of Hostel. I don't know if you've seen the original
I
Hostel.
just watched those.
Oh yeah. So like, kind of finding all the people who are involved with it, so John straps bombs to a dude's arms, duct tapes his hands, and then he just and then he just has like scalpels, I guess, sticking out.
Something like that.
Yeah, okay. So what did you think about that one?
As soon as I saw it, there was a song that I listened to in high school. I think the band was called Social Code, but they
Okay.
had a song called Bomb Hands. And as
No
soon as
way.
I saw that, it just started playing in my head. So I laughed a little bit. There was something so strange about that trap, though. Like, it just, the quality of the others seems so technical, and this one, the first thing you see is just little nubs of just duct tape.
Yeah.
So it felt a little homemade.
Mm-hmm.
But it was an interesting one. And it also, that was a huge twist for me when he was like, oh, like it's the taxi driver. And I was like, oh, the taxi driver. He's like, he was also pretending to be the surgeon. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, yeah. I
Because,
I suspected the taxi driver from the beginning, but I had no idea that he was also, playing the surgeon. Yeah,
yeah.
the duct tape thing was really odd because everything was with John is usually like mechanical.
Yeah.
And so you have duct tape covering your hand and a scalpel. So why not just cut through the duct tape? And then you could free one of your hands and then cut through the other one. I mean, you could at least cut better, like I don't know, but I guess he didn't give him enough of time to really.
At first, it confused me too, because I immediately I thought like, oh, he has to chisel off his hand, like the foot kind of thing. So I was like, well, then how does he do the other one? So it took me a second.
Yeah, I thought the same thing, and then, but even like just cutting into his arm. Yeah. Now you got to turn around and use that arm to cut into the. I was like, John, come on, like give him a one bomb arm or something. Or like make it a bomb chest. I don't know, man. Some of these, yeah, especially like as the films go on, it's like, John, these are unwinnable. Like, you're testing their will for life, but there's also physical restrictions of what human beings can endure. Which brings us to the next one, and this might be my favorite trap of the movie, and also might be one of my favorite traps ever, like for any of them. Ooh. The marrow vacuum. Yeah, what did you think about that one?
Oh, that one was a lot. Like, first, like there were so many elements to it too. Like, not only does she have to cut through a giant limb, which includes your femur.
Yeah.
Like that alone was enough. But then once she gets through that, they're like, oh yeah, part 2 is over here. And then something about it, like just the actual marrow, like splooshing down, was so gross.
Yeah. The way that this one was shot and acted, having everyone around, you're getting their reactions, but also they're like yelling at her. And yeah, like, one of the styles of like the Saw traps is like a person wakes up, they're screaming and shaking, and the camera is going like around them. And there's none of that in this one. It is just on this woman cutting off her own leg and then sucking out the marrow with a vacuum. And I was like, I was crawling in my seat during this one. And I can take violence and all of that stuff, but this one felt like especially heinous. And with this being the first trap for the group, I was like, what is going to happen after this? I think they kind of got tamer as they went, honestly, but yeah. And also, I thought she was supposed to suck the marrow out of the leg that she had just cut off.
Me too.
And I was like, how is she supposed to reach that? Like, how's she supposed to do
what? It's like game over, I guess. She can't reach that.
But yeah, that part, close to the highlight of the movie for me, and just really, really, really intense. So then we have the brain surgery fire mask.
Yes.
Yeah. What did you think about that?
That one to me seemed so impossible. Like when I saw the trailer, I thought this man was actually a brain surgeon. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. He is not, though. He's just like, he has maybe exposure to medical things, but he works at like a veterinary clinic or something.
Yeah.
So my faith in him went skyrocketing downward. he didn't even know the tools. Like, he's like, what's that? Like, what is that?
Right.
Like, oh no, this man stands no chance.
Right.
He did a lot better than I thought he would.
Yeah, I would not have done it. I gotta tell you, like if it
Uh-uh.
was like, all right, hey, do this, or you're gonna get your head cut off. I'd be like, "Huh? This is the end of my life.
Yeah.
I'm not pulling out my own brain.
No, no way. There are certain ones where I'm like, death is fine if this is the other option.
I did. I thought when the mask finally closes and cooks him, and you see like it's an old style like Mayan mask. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know how I feel about that. Like
Oh,
they
I
had
loved
time.
it
You loved it? Oh, okay, all right. Like
because the tour guide pointed out something very
right,
similar on the way there. So
right.
I thought it was a connection to that. Maybe.
I was just like, okay, you have time to build all these traps, kidnap all these people, and on top of that, you're doing like artistic flourishes. Like, okay, I think you got too much time on your hands, but okay, whatever.
Oh, it all has to tie together for him.
Yeah.
It's a story.
So then after that, we have the radiation machine slash just giant heat gun. I wasn't sure if that was like an actual radiation emitter, and then I was like, are those even a thing? Like,
It seemed very intense for a
yeah,
medical equipment.
yeah. I mean, I know I used to work in a humongous warehouse with no heating, and so we would
Mhm.
have things very similar to that hanging up, and
Oof.
they were extremely hot because they had to heat, like a huge place. And so I was like, okay, maybe it's just like a super industrial heater. Anyway, how'd you feel about that one?
I think mixed. My friend who I saw it with, we argued about that one afterwards because she got at first, so she was raised like diagonally almost, like one
Yeah.
hand, opposite leg. Like I thought she was gonna get pulled or stretched or something like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And then he and I argued about the best way to go about trying to get out of the trap. Because in my mind, I'm like, yeah, like you get your foot, you get your hand, you plop down, and he thinks it would have been better to do the hand first, and then you could have accessed your foot better. I'm like, yeah, but then you just slam to the ground. What if you're knocked unconscious and then you're just done? Or
That's true. That's true. Yeah. At first, I thought the same exact thing. I was like, "Oh, well, do your foot," but then I was like, "Wait, she's gonna fall anyway." like, like there. That was kind of another trap where I was like, "This also doesn't really seem winnable because she could do it, no hesitation. She does it all, and then she falls and breaks her neck. Like, there's
yeah,
no chance of winning that, John."
but I mean, in theory, she did.
Right, right. And she did, and yeah, she should have survived. So then we get to the last trap, and I guess this trap was intended for John and Amanda because they knew that he would come. They knew that he would. I get all right, whatever. But John and Carlos end up going on it, and the, I will say, like, it looks good, like it didn't look like a bunch of CGI nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of wondering, and maybe if you're listening to this, you're like, Seth, how could you possibly be wondering? But like, I was like, how are they doing this right now? Like, are they actually pouring liquid on these people? Because that's like waterboarding, which is like illegal.
I mean, it
uh,
looked like it.
yeah. So how did you feel about that one?
This is where I was kind of confused. I was like, okay, so like where's this going?
Mm-hmm.
And it did feel like a long time. Like it
Mm-hmm.
was up and down, up and down, up and down. I'm like, okay, what's next? So it was fine.
Yeah.
I don't think I really feel one way or the other about it. Like, didn't love it, but it was okay.
I thought it was kind of cool to see John in one of his own traps. Like after all this time, it was like, okay, that is kind of interesting. Like, how is he going to get out of it? But then it all turns out to just be orchestrated anyway. So it's like, okay, well, whatever. And so the final trap, this is the twist trap. And it's when we get the reveal of everything that has secretly been going on. And the only time that I had an inkling of like, wait, am I supposed to be paying attention to a twist right now? Is when John is talking to Amanda and he says, don't worry, everything will go according to plan. And I was like, okay, right. It is already. You have them all chained up and okay, all right. So yeah, I guess it's just like a poison room. They have to fight to the death. And I think this might, I don't know. I don't want to say this is like my least favorite part of the movie, but it didn't make that much sense to me because you've got these two people who are killing people essentially and taking their money, and their test is to kill each other, and then they get to survive. Like, that's not a test for Peterson. Like, she
Yeah.
she has no problem doing that. And then she does it, and then she survives. So it's like, what was the test? Like, I don't know. That was the only part that really kind of, the whole thing kind of fell apart for me. But
Me too, because out of all of the people, she was definitely the worst out of the whole group.
yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah,
if anyone deserves to die in one of these traps, it is her. And not even like in this group, like I think we said this before, but almost in the whole franchise, like she is just one of the worst people because a
yeah,
lot of the victims were doing things, but they didn't like mean to be causing harm, or they were doing it to
yeah.
themselves because they were sad or whatever.
Right.
But she was deliberately like hurting vulnerable people and involving others in this huge scheme. And I'm like, no, like I want to see her in a trap and I want it not to go in her favor. Like, so I don't know. I found it a little unsatisfying to see her supposedly just survive and she's good now. And
Yeah, the only thing that I could think was like when John is on the platform and he's chained up and they're going back and forth, I was like, this is what Saw has needed, which is a villain for the villain beyond just the police that are trying to capture the villain. Because, you know, I mean, are you really rooting against Strom? Like, are you really,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, and then all of the victims, even though they're shown to be like selfish and annoying and like they've done bad things, like, the shotgun uh roulette thing, are you really like, yeah, I hope all these people get it, like, you know what I mean? Like, they have a bad job, but I don't know, and so in Peterson I was like, this is a great addition to the whole idea, is like, here's this villain. And so having her survive kind of made me like, okay, are they going to reuse her later on?
Mm-hmm.
Because we still have, I think it's Logan, right? Logan is still kicking around.
Yeah,
The
he's
doctor is still
somewhere.
kicking around. Carlos, question mark. you know, like, and so I really think they could do more. So it'd be interesting to see if Peterson kind of comes back.
I hope she does, but not for long.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you feel about, like, if they just did a whole reboot, kept Tobin Bell, and just this time didn't kill John Kramer? Like, how would you feel about that?
I would keep watching. Like as long as there's Saw content, I'm gonna watch it. It is interesting though to see where they can go with it. Because I think like there was Jigsaw, which was kind of a reboot ish,
Right.
and there was Spiral, which was kind of a reboot ish. This one isn't that. It's like stuck in between, but it also feels like kind of independent as well.
Yeah.
So it is interesting to see where it can go, and there's so many characters that could be brought back or could have a storyline, or so I think there's a lot of potential, and I definitely watch it whatever it is, but yeah, it would be interesting to see kind of where the journey goes.
Right. Yeah, like to me, killing him off in 3, I think it was shocking. Like watching that in theaters, I was like, are you serious? Like, are you kidding? And that was a big tease leading up to 4, was like, is he actually dead? And you see
Mm-hmm.
the autopsy and you're like, okay, maybe he could come back from that. And then it's like, all right, I guess he can't come back from this. But it was like, what's going to happen? Because up until that point, I believe the only assistants that we knew about was Zepp and Amanda.
Mm-hmm.
So it, like, when they announced another one, it was like, how? Like, what's left, kind of a thing. But anyway, I had so much fun with this one, and Tobin Bell really kind of like pulled on my heartstrings so much that I was like,
Oh yeah.
I want more, and I would be willing to just say, okay, just start over, have him in it, make him a cancer-free John, or like, something that's like manageable. And because there was a moment in this when he thought he was doing better, and he is sitting down, he's sketching the thing, and then he just kind of like rips it and throws it away. And you think like, oh, if he was doing better, would he have stopped doing it? And so I think that that's also an interesting angle to kind of, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I was ready to be like, I gotta tell you, man, I was so bummed out watching these Saw movies. I was just like Jigsaw, I actually was like, okay, I kind of like this one. I wasn't so into the traps, but I had no idea what to expect going into Saw X. And I was just so pleasantly surprised that I was like, then equally as bummed out. As nice of an ending it is. Like, if we think about Saw endings, right? A lot of the times we're getting doors closing and people saying game over or
Yeah.
something similar to that. And so, like, having the moment where instead the door opens and they walk out into the sunlight, and we know what their fate is over the next 2 movies. Like, it was just really nice to have that. And it felt so like deliberate, on their part. Like, we're going to do this one
Mm-hmm.
differently, and we're going to give them like a proper send off that they didn't get. Anyway, I'm saying the same thing over and over again. All I'm saying is I'm bummed out that this might be the end of John Kramer.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's definitely bittersweet. And like you see, like when they end, they're happy, they've survived, like, okay, we're moving on. But we know that Amanda is going to be put through 2 more tests and not make it. We know that
Mm-hmm.
John is going to be toast.
Mm-hmm.
So it is interesting. And same with like Jigsaw's fate. We know that Jigsaw, the character, and Tobin Bell are getting older. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what a future of Saw looks like without that. Because even though Jigsaw's dead, he's still kicking around in these movies.
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like the future is dependent also on like maybe Tobin Bell or
Right. Yeah, I mean, an easy way of doing it, because we know that Jigsaw has a flair for videography, is just record a bunch of videos of him to his different disciples, and maybe there's people we've never heard of, and you know, I would be pretty disappointed if they didn't return to. I know I just keep calling him the Doctor. It's because I can't remember his name.
Gordon Lawrence
Yes,
or
Dr.
Lawrence
Lawrence,
Gordon.
Dr. Gordon, and Logan. Like, it would be a bummer if they didn't return to them. So I hope for more Saw, whatever it looks like. I'm here for it, especially after this. Like, I was buzzing last night. Like, I got out of the theater. I sent you a message that just said "Holy moly" in all caps, and I feel like I haven't felt that way since watching like the first one all those years ago.
It definitely felt like on the same playing field as the first one, because
Mm-hmm.
very story focused, very like we're getting to know John and his journey, and the rest have a strong storyline, I think, but it does definitely dive more into the traps. But this
Yeah,
one and the first one were very story heavy.
yeah. All right. Did you have anything that we didn't talk about?
There was one part where John goes out of his way to buy like Gabriella that nice bottle and like a
Yes.
gift card. And I was confused as to why. And like she wasn't like overly present during his so-called procedure. I'm like she offered him tequila,
Right.
which he didn't drink. I was like, oh, why did
Yeah.
she get a gift?
I mean, I think he just. I don't know. I don't know. That's a great question. Like, he doesn't write a card to Peterson and company. He just is like, Gabriella, like
Yeah.
you're the nicest person I've ever met, I guess.
And then even later on, when Amanda has a soft spot for Gabriella, it's gone with John. He's like, no, we're moving on to her trap.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
like, huh. Like,
Right, because they both were drug addicts, and so she's more sympathetic as to why she's there, and it is a good opportunity for John to kind of explain more his philosophy. Like, even in the
mm-hmm.
he's like, look, Amanda, I'm even doing this to Gabriella, and she's my favorite, so you have to remove yourself from it.
That's true. I did have a line that wasn't really relevant to the movie, but I thought it was funny. It was when they were breaking into Peterson's home and she grabs a bat or something and she's like, oh, I've got like a bat. And I used to do that all the time. Anytime I was home alone, you hear a noise and I'm like, I know karate.
Right.
So I've got a bat.
Yes, she actually yells out. She says, "I've got a gun," but she
Yeah.
doesn't have a gun, which in home defense they teach you never do that. You never want to
Oh no.
escalate. Yeah, you never want to escalate a situation, because if you say like, "Hey, I've got a bat," or "I've got a gun," or "I know karate," and they do have a gun, they're just going to start blasting. You're supposed to
True.
say, "I called the cops 10 minutes ago."
This is good to know.
Yeah.
That is not my tactic.
You say, "I called the cops 10 minutes ago. They'll be here any second."
Perfect. There we go. Everybody listening, we're saving you.
There you go. There was another line that really made me laugh when John is in the beginning talking to his doctor, and he's like, "I have so much work to do." And the doctor's like, "My recommendation to you, retire." And John just gives this look. And I was just like, yo, that is so. And it was so fun to see. Like, again, like, this director has been working on this series now for a really long time. It's so fun to see them being able to poke fun at themselves. You know, it's not like some new director came in and they're like making fun of Saw and the whole premise.
Mm-hmm.
They're making fun of themselves. They're having fun with the whole thing, and it's not like cheesy. Like, my theater was not full. I was really upset. I was like, oh no. I sent in our Discord, I was like, there's only like 3 people in this movie with me. More people did show up, but I was like, this is not looking good for Saw X on opening night. But I was busting out laughing 5 or 6 times in this movie at the funny lines. Like, and nobody else was laughing. I was like, oh no, maybe they're not Saw heads in here. But then when Hoffman showed up at the end, several people in the crowd were like, Hoffman. And I was like, Hoffman? All right, sure.
That's
whatever.
what gets you going.
Yeah.
The post scene kind of blew my mind too, because it was Henry, who I'd kind of forgotten about at that point.
Yeah.
And then you see him, and I was like, He was in on it too.
Yeah, because he had
Like,
to. He
no.
must be going around to all these support groups, luring people in. That's and like I
Yeah.
said, that's why it's kind of like hostile in that way. Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was suspicious of Henry, and only because like we've seen, you see the trailer, you kind of know the setup of the movie, and but another thing that I'll say is even knowing the setup, it goes on for so long that I was like, maybe there's another layer to this. Like this feels, I don't want to say like it felt legit, but I was like, what is going on here? And then of course it ends up being a total scam, which if you're going to scam me and think I had brain surgery, you're not even going to give me like a little cut. like,
At least shave his head.
like he takes his bandage off and there's nothing. Like nothing. Like you said, they didn't even shave a spot. Like you have a dude there who works in a vet office. You're making hundreds of thousands. Learn how to do some simple stitches. You know what I mean? Like just do a cut with a little knife, a butter knife, anything. My God. Like yeah, when he pulled it off and it was bare, I was like, they did not even try. Like they literally were just like, yeah, wrap him up and get him out of here.
Every other part was so complex, though. Like they
Right,
had all
right.
this equipment and all of the setup and people kidnapping you and
Right. Yeah, you can go through all those stages, but then fake blood. Any, maybe he takes the bandage off and there's like a fake scar there, and then he peels it off, or I don't know. Nah, yeah, that part was pretty. Right, you have the medicine to put a man under, like anesthesia. Anyway, I don't want to pick this movie apart, even though I think you could. Like, there are definitely plot holes, and you're bringing people to a secret location that has huge radio towers clearly in the distance where people can find you again. And I did like that when John was like doing MacGyver and he was like triangulating the position. Just like, and again, like at an outdoor cafe, I never knew that Jigsaw was such an outdoor cafe like enthusiast. I guess because, and again, like to the credit of the creative team behind it, they take like everything we know about Saw and just do away with it. Very, very few like color filters on
Mhm.
we're out in broad daylight, yeah. Anyway, I know you said this is about middle of the pack. Where do you think you would rank this as far as the Saw movies?
Probably like 4 or 5.
Okay.
It's not at the bottom, but it's not at the top either.
What
In the
is
middle.
your bottom?
Oh, I think like maybe 3D
Oh yeah? Okay.
or yeah. I did my letterbox yesterday. I forget what was at the bottom, but I know 3D was down there.
Got it. And then what's at the top for you?
It was 5 for a long time because of that nostalgia factor, but it is 2 now.
Okay, very cool. Very cool.
What about you?
Yeah, I think I would say Saw number 1 is still number 1. I think it's the movie that works best because you don't have all the baggage of like needing to remember who all the different characters are and needing to remember like all the different timelines. Like I keep bringing up Jigsaw, but like in that one, the whole movie, you're just like, how is this happening? Like, and then you find out how it's happening. And even in 2, it is a good reveal in 2, but it does require you knowing something about the series. And I'm a big fan of series. I think it's great. I think, ongoing information is fun for the people watching, but you can just show someone the first Saw movie and they get it. It's
Mhm.
start, middle, ending, great reveal, movie's over. Okay, I get it. So I still think that Saw 1 is the best. I would probably put this at number 2, honestly,
Ooh.
which um, I was really surprised by. Honestly, as much as I've been looking forward to talking to you about this, I was like, oh my God, what if this movie is absolutely terrible?
That's just as fun to talk about, though.
Yeah, and then probably the bottom for me would be 6, maybe 5,
Oh
probably
no.
6, probably 6. Um, that one I was just like, what are we doing? Like, did they lose all of their budget? Like,
6 has really grown on me. It used to be near the bottom for me, but in rewatching it, I like it a lot more. It's definitely
okay.
like up there for me now. They float around. Like there's a few that stay at the top for me, but the other ones kind of float around.
Honestly, I think I sent a tweet after finishing all of the movies finally that said something like, I've now finished the entire Saw series and I'm more confused as ever as to how I feel about this series. I think if I looked at all horror series, this is probably my favorite. Now, I haven't seen all of Final Destination. I haven't seen all of, Friday the 13th. Um, so I can't say that definitively. And of course, no one can ever say anything definitively because there will always be movies you've never heard of. But
Mm-hmm.
Saw definitely still has a very special place in my heart. And despite not liking its like middle, um, I still think it's entertaining.
I do too, and I don't know. I think what's interesting about it is it's just so different than the other
Hmm.
series, and a lot of people like say it's torture porn, and that's all it is. And there's just so many layers of complexity to it, and like there is a story in there, and there's connected plot points and characters. So I think there's a lot going on that's really fun.
I hate that term. I completely
Mm.
reject that term. And I like horror movies, but I am not. I would never say like, oh, I'm a horror person. Like when you're super into a genre, I think you're a lot more forgiving of that genre. And so me coming from not being a horror person, I think that is such a um, what's the word? Uh, it's just a term that's used to make people who like that stuff look stupid. And anything that's judging an entire genre or an entire group of people as a whole, I'm always going to reject because
Hmm.
we don't know why we like what we like. And there's this whole idea nowadays of, well, if you like good things, you're a good person. No, absolutely not. Has nothing to do, you know, like Erica. If I met you on the street, I would not be like, I think that this person, if you go to Erica's Instagram, you would not in a million years guess. Like, I think that this woman really loves Saw. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, like, you don't have to be any one type of way to like something. And anyway, I hate when people say that. You can say like it's not for me. You can even I'm even okay with people saying like it's lowbrow or it's not incredibly thought provoking. Like, the director himself saying the storyline of Saw is not the most important part. But to just discredit the whole thing and say like, oh well, that's torture porn. It's like, dude, I'm happy for you, and I hope that you live a long, full life, and I hope John Kramer never hears you say
Yeah.
that. We need a Saw that's based just on um, things that people do in movie theaters and
Oh,
people who are rude about movies online. Maybe I'll do that.
there we go. Yeah, like there's a million movies that everyone else seems to love that aren't for me. And I'm like, I didn't love it, but I understand why you do. Like this was
Right.
really well done and that
Right.
part was great. So I'm like, I get why you like it. It just wasn't my favorite. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. You know, people don't have to. I firmly believe it. People do not have to justify why they like something. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
say like I'll never understand how people can. I'm not admitting something bad about that person. I'm admitting something bad about. I'll never understand. I am admitting that there's something I don't understand. The problem lies with me, but people will get that. It frustrates and angers them that they feel that there's something they're missing out on or that they're stupid about or whatever. And so they turn it onto the other people. And it's just, it's not a good, it's not a healthy mindset to have, you know, like, yeah, if you say, well, Saw is my favorite series, and my first response is, why? Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. Come on. They're movies. It's anyway. Did you have anything else that we didn't talk about?
I don't think so. I think we touched on all my notes.
All right, cool. So, Erica, thank you very much for joining me. I'm glad that we finally did it. And where can people find you online?
Well, in terms of where I'm most active, it would be Twitter. I'm just underscore Erica underscore. Mostly talk about horror. Occasionally share cute dog pictures.
Yes. Yes. I like genuinely you're one of the people that I very much enjoy following because I don't know if I can really recall a ton of negativity coming from your page.
I try to
Um,
keep it positive.
you know, you're into your horror movies, and I think that's great. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. And if you haven't already, you know, subscribe to the show. Makes it so that you can find us again. And that's pretty much it. If you want to send us an email, moviefriendspodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about Saw X. Am I crazy for ranking it number 2? Is Erica crazy for ranking it 4 or 5? Is this the best Saw movie? Is this the worst Saw movie? I don't know. We would like to hear from you. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Anyway, Erica, thank you again. And thank you for listening. Have a good one.
Movie Friends is produced by Seth Vargas and Michelle Rubenstein. Music by Anthony Vicora. If you like the show, please subscribe and give us a rating. It really helps us find new friends. Thanks!